Alright, so let's start with a new series here on this channel, the 24-hour challenge. And today's challenge is how to make 30 days of Instagram content in one single day. Intro. Okay, so since I really like to talk about behind the scenes here on this channel, I thought let's talk about how to make 30 days of Instagram content in 24 hours. I thought the challenge would be great because it's actually a challenge to create this kind of content for a long period of time in just 24 hours. But especially if you can't create content in the next couple of weeks, you need to create the content right now. So here's how I did it in one single day. Okay, so to create actually 30 days of Instagram content, I thought it would be better to follow a few steps, tips and tricks to create the overall content as easy as possible. So let's talk about that first. And the first step for me to create that much content is to plan and prepare. If you actually need to produce a lot of content, you need to have a plan, otherwise you will get stuck after a few hours because it's way too much work. So what I can highly recommend is to open up a notes document and to write down what kind of content you want to publish over the next 30 days. Of course, you don't need to have a complete plan, but basically you should know what you need to do to get the right content and what kind of content you want to create. So as an example, let's say your page is about camera gear. In this case, you need at least 30 pictures of your camera gear and maybe if you do that, some additional pictures to fill up your post. But of course, yeah, sometimes you don't have 30 picture ideas in your mind. And that might be a problem. So what I recommend is to check out other pages about camera gear or maybe Google to get some inspiration and then use that to create your own content plan. In the end, that makes it way easier to find some content that you like to produce and you don't have to start from zero. So yeah, in this case, I actually post camera gear and a lot of nature photos in my feed. So I will use that as a baseline for my content. And since I recently started to follow a little grid strategy, I noted that I need at least 10 nature photos and 20 camera gear related pictures, plus some additional content for the swipe feature in the feed. So now the basic plan is ready to use, but what we need to talk about next is the content production. And yeah, this is an extremely important step because if you don't take good photos, the whole plan will fail. And exactly that's why I highly recommend to make it as easy as possible for you to take these photos. And to make it as simple as possible, I picked up my cameras, in this case a Canon EOS R and R5, and I went outside into the forest to take all the photos. So what I did was to simply start to take a variety of photos to get into the workflow, and especially these photos are sometimes great for additional content. But after some test shots, I started to take the first camera gear photos. And here it is really important to not stick to one angle and spot, because I don't want to simply copy every image. So what I did was to find a nice place for my first photos, and then I took a variety of photos with different angles, and right after that I switched the location. And especially that's why I decided to use the nature as my location, because there are tons of options that you can use to create different pictures. So as an example, if you take 30 good pictures at least 6 locations, you can easily rotate between them to mix things up. And since I used the nature as my go-to location for these camera gear photos, it was actually really easy to do to take some nature photos too, as soon as I noticed some cool stuff that was around me. So in the end, it is way easier to take a variety of photos if you choose the right location for your photography session. And yeah, since I took way more than 30 images in this photography session, I had the chance to use it as additional content for the swipe feature in the feed too. So yeah, instead, if I had to create each individual set at home, it would take way too much time to create 30 individual photos. And yeah, especially that is something that you want to avoid if you need to create content really fast. But now let's move on to the post-production. And in this case, I simply imported all my pictures that I took into Lightroom and checked them all to find those that I want to use. To make the post-production easier, I always marked them by pressing P or a number between 1 and 5, and then I simply sorted them by using this nice feature here in Lightroom. In the end, it is way easier and I don't need to scroll through the complete timeline over and over again, which is extremely annoying. So I use this all the time to improve my workflow. Another feature that I used to improve my workflow was the synchronize feature. So what I did was to simply make the complete post-production for one picture, and right after that I selected all those images that should use the same color grading. If you now click on the synchronize button in Lightroom, Lightroom will add all those adjustments to the selected pictures, which makes the whole color correction process way easier. The last step was to check all those images to make some fine tuning and to crop the images for Instagram. I mostly use 4x5, but 1x1 is fine too. And by the way, if you're interested in my Instagram export settings, definitely check out the link down in the first comment. So yeah, now we have created the basic content that we want to publish, but what's about the additional content? Well, in this case I really like to use some additional nature shots that I took in the last photo session to share some more details about the lens or camera. And another step that I like to include is the before and after shot. Mostly I press Y on my keyboard in Lightroom to get this before and after preview of the image, and then I simply make a screenshot of that to show some behind the scenes of my post-production. So for every single day I can easily create at least one additional picture that shows the before and after of the post-production. This is super easy to do and actually shows what happened to the raw file. And yeah, for me this is one of the most important aspects about photo editing, because I want to know how the image changed over time. But we are not done yet. The next step is to prepare your posts. So yeah, first it's time to sort the images, and to do that I simply created folders for each single day and to put all those images that I want to post on this day into this folder. So the only thing that I had to do was to go into this folder, select all those images every single day and send them to my phone via AirDrop and to create the post. Of course, what you can do to spend less time on that is to use a management tool for that, but in most cases you have to use a paid version to plan all those postings for a whole month, including multiple pictures in one post, so that's actually not the best way if you're just starting out. But of course it's possible to save even more time. Okay, so yeah, to wrap it up here, it is actually possible to create 30 days of Instagram content in one single day. In my opinion, this is extremely helpful if you don't have that much time, for example, or if you want to simply improve your own workflow. But what I highly recommend is to make a plan before you shoot. In this case, it is way easier to actually stay focused and to not waste that much time on all kind of stuff. But yeah, the most important part is to have enough time for the production and post-production, because that is a key element of your posting. And here it is really important to focus on quality and quantity. It is not always about the highest standards, especially if you have to pre-plan your postings, but you shouldn't use bad images just to have a photo for your feed. So in the end, what I highly recommend is to be a little bit creative and use some inspiration to get started. Okay, so yeah, challenge completed. This is my way on how to create 30 days of Instagram content in just 24 hours. I know it is hard to do, but if I can do it, you can do it too. So definitely give it a try. So thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're new here, don't forget to smash that subscribe button to stay updated for upcoming videos, and I'll see you in the next video.